Everyone, I'm Allie, co-founder of PotomacBeads. Join me in making this Montana Sky bracelet, which you can make with an array of different beads. We're going to start out with our 8s and 11/0 seed beads. So to begin our design, I have some .006 black wildfire beading thread, and I have a stop bead on the thread, just taking the needle and the thread through that bead 2 times with the thread exposed on the outside. I have on a size 12 needle, a 10 will work as well. And then we're going to begin by putting on our 8/0 seed beads in the Duracoat galvanized light pewter. I have 6 8/0 seed beads on to begin a ladder stitch that is going to be established for the start of my bracelet. Once you have 6 beads on your thread, you want to take your needle and thread back through those first 3 beads, starting from that stop bead end and going towards the long thread end. That's going to bring it so those 2 sets of 3 are sitting right next to one another. From here, take your needle and thread down through the second group of 3, having your needle come out right next to that stop thread. From here, we are going to do 6 more rows of this ladder stitch. You're going to add 3 of your 8/0 seed beads at a time. Sew into a circle, so you're coming out the bottom of that second row of 3. We're going to sew into the top row of 3, and it's going to alternate with each stitch. Then you're going to sew back through the 3 that you just added, ending at the top. That gets your 3rd row in place. From here, 3 more go on. Coming out the top of the 3rd row, go into the bottom of the 3rd row. Coming out the top of the 3rd row then, so down towards the bottom of the 4th row that you just added. I want you to repeat this until you are left with 8 rows of your ladder stitch. After finishing your 8th row of the ladder stitch, you'll have these 8 rows of 3, and your thread and needle should be coming out on the same side as the stop bead. The stop bead is actually going to be towards the interior of the bracelet, and we will build and add the clasp after the fact on the exterior. From here, we're going to do rows of seed beads. I have my Cobalt 11/0 seed beads here, and what you're going to do is pick up a row of seed beads on your needle. This row of seed beads is going to be approximately 120 beads or 6.5 inches long. So once you have them on, you're going to drop them down the whole entire way, making sure that you have about at least 6 to 6.5 inches if you want to get a 7-inch wrist. So continue adding on lots of your 11/0 seed bead, approximately 120 of them to get the length. Once you have your row of seed beads strung, and this is the Miyuki Cobalt in that Picasso finish, I also have the Seafoam, the red Garnet, and the Chartreuse to get this Montana Sky look. From here, I want you to add in 3 of your 11/0 or your 8/0s in that Duracoat galvanized silver, and then 3 more. Take your needle and thread, go back through the first 3 in that circular motion, coming from where the seed beads are toward the small 11/0s out towards the 8/0s after the first 3. That's going to ladder stitch that second group of 3 onto there. Just like we've been doing with the ladder stitch, come down through those 3 to the back of those 11/0s, and then get ready again to string another approximately 120 of those 11/0 seed beads in the Cobalt color. Once you have your 120 strung on both directions, and remember we have that ladder stitch there, you're going to take your needle and thread down through the second row of the original ladder stitch. It's actually the 7th row, but when you are here too, you want to make sure that your threads end, or I'm sorry, your seed bead lines end in the exact same measurement. So kind of pull here, make sure that it's tight, and make sure they're running to the same size. From here, we are literally going to repeat the same thing, making 4 independent strips 4 times. So I'm going to go in and add 1 of my 8/0s, go through that 3rd row of the ladder stitch here, and then start with my second color. My second color that I'm going to do is that Seafoam. Then I'm going to switch to Garnet, and then I'm going to switch to that Chartreuse color, doing 4 lines of 2, and then doing those independent ladder stitch sections. I'm not going to go and actually add the second side of the ladder stitch together till after I do the braiding. Just to show then, as I get done row 2, or the second grouping of color, I have my Seafoam there, my 3 seed beads on that are disconnected, and then here down at the end, I'm going to sew back through row number 4, And as I progress them, after making sure those rows match in length, I'm going to add one more 8/0 seed bead and sew down the 5th row. So again, I'm going to continue on with my garnet and then my chartreuse lines of my seed beads. As I finish doing the last string down through the ladder stitch on the other side, you'll have that stop bead there. You can just kind of push it back or out of the way. At this point, what I am going to do, as I have that here, is get ready to do all of my braids. Now keep in mind, if you do not want to braid, you will skip this braiding section, and then you'll come back and add together the ladder stitch on the other side of the piece, just sewing back down through this second row, or the first row of the chartreuse, and then gathering up, putting in a 8/0 seed bead between the rows of the ladder stitch. What I'm going to be doing is braiding. Now I don't want this to move around while I am doing the braiding, so I am going to put basically a temporary stop bead there. So it doesn't matter what bead it is, you're just going to add a bead onto the thread, go back through that bead, and push that down. If you want to, you can also knot off onto that start bead. That's up to you. There I have that, and I'm not going to have to worry about it as I'm setting up and getting ready to do my braid. Now we're going to break down our 4-stranded braid. I've pre-braided it because it's really quick and simple once you get it. But basically the strands in the middle are going to kind of cross over one another, and then we're going to build from there. It's going to shorten because we are crossing, and at the very final end, what we want to do is we want to get the strands so we can go ahead and line up the ladder stitch and sew that ladder stitch together. So the end is going to match the beginning with that stitching. The braid will keep because of the ladder stitch. So I'm going to kind of let go of the braid here and get all of my strands in line to begin the braid. The first thing that you're going to do is cross strand 3 over strand 2. Because the strands get jostled, I'm going to refer to them as colors. We have 4 colors, which is going to make it easier to explain how to do this. So I'm taking the turquoise over the red and making that first cross. I'm going to kind of push that down so that way it's nice and close towards that base. From here, we're going to take the turquoise and put the chartreuse over the turquoise. Again, kind of pulling it down. From here, I want to take the red, so the turquoise went under, the red is going to go over the cobalt. This establishes that first turn. From here, we're going to take the cobalt over the chartreuse. Once the cobalt is over the chartreuse, you have your first actually set of your braid. From here, the turquoise is going to go over the cobalt, and I want to get the turquoise and the red back to the middle. The red's going to go under the chartreuse. Back here to the middle then, the red goes over the turquoise, and then the red's going to go under the cobalt. Because that side went under, you know that the turquoise is going to go over because you're doing the opposite. Once you get to that middle strand again, we have those 2 strands in the middle, and you're going to notice basically what happened last. So last time you had the green color, it was going under, so now you know you're going to take it over. The blue is under, so you know you're going to take it over the turquoise. The red is under, take it over the chartreuse. And that's going to establish the braid. Pulling it down a little bit further, and then I'll continue with that braid. Crossing over, that you see the turquoise, the last thing that it did was go under a strand, so now it's going to go over, and it's going to go over the red strand. And that garnet strand, you can see the last time it went over, so that time it goes under. Same thing here, it's over, so it's going to go under the chartreuse. Here it's under, so it's going to go over the cobalt. Here in the middle, cobalt was last underneath, and chartreuse is to the top, so you know the cobalt is going to go on top of the chartreuse. When you're doing this, what I want you to do is, as you're establishing that braid, kind of push that braid down and make it a little bit tighter. Now I'm doing this, but you can also keep it shorter if you want, which is going to make more of a tight braid. I still want to be able to see inside that braid, but I still want that braided effect. So again, continuing on with the braid, here to the middle, chartreuse is over here, cobalt's under, so switch. Turquoise here is under, so it's going to go over. Chartreuse is going to go over then, or the garnet's going to go under. Once you're satisfied with your braid, it is time to ladder stitch these together. Now I want to get my needle and thread to this end to be able to do the ladder stitch. It's currently at the starting end here, and it has that stop bead on it. You're going to take this stop bead off and weave it back through that second line in of the Chartreuse beads. If you want to, you could have done that originally too, and it's going to pop out the end of the ladder stitch right here, ready to go at the very, very end. So I'm going to take that stop bead off and go into that second strand of the Chartreuse bead, taking the thread all the way up, and we're going to be exiting through the first 3 beads there at the end. Once you strand the thread back through, my actual stop is going to be opposite my start. So I have my turquoise red, or sorry, Chartreuse red, turquoise, and cobalt. From the end here, you're going to take your thread and needle and connect these ladder stitch rows. So I'm at the end here, I'm going to sew down through the second row of 3 8/0 seed beads. And then I'm going to grab on to the red, sewing down through, oops, sorry, got to add that you're going up through, not down through, because you're at the bottom there. So you're going up through the red, which is going to sit next in line, and out the top. When you come out the top, I want you to add one of your 8/0 seed beads, and then you're going to sew down line 3, or line 2 that you just were coming out of. That's going to connect those first 2 into the ladder stitch. From here, we're going to connect the next color, which if you look back to your starter row, they should kind of be in order. And you're going to connect that to the third color. So I'm going to go back up through line 3, down through line 4, and then get ready to attach line 5, which is going to attach to the bottom of my turquoise row, making sure that your seed beads aren't flipping. So see how that one wants to flip there? I'm going to set it out straight. I'm going to sew up into that one here, add on an 8/0, circle around, and ladder stitch on both the third and then the fourth color. Coming out the end, I'm going to actually sew through my ladder stitch to get to the very first 8/0 seed bead, and that's sticking out the top there. So I'm just going to basically be reinforcing the ladder, going whole way through the ladder stitch, up and down along the beads. So I'm not circling around, I'm just zigzagging. This is also going to help to pull them in a little bit closer and a little bit more in order and tighten it up now that I'm not worrying about the order of them because that order is established. So going through that whole ladder stitch, you're just zigzagging up and down. What that's going to do is bring you out through the second row of the ladder stitch, and you are going to stitch through that first 8/0 seed bead. Once you're coming out of your line of seed beads there and you're at the 8/0, you're going to add 3 seed beads in that garnet color. I'm going to go through the next 8/0, adding 3 seed beads in the garnet color as well. To finish off, I want to add in 10, I repeat 10, of the 11/0s. I'm choosing to add these in the turquoise color. And once I have those 10 on, I'm going to ladder stitch them onto that previous row of 8s as well as 11s. Once you've got that, go back through the first 6 beads of those 10. Go down through that middle 8/0. Once you're through the middle 8/0, we're going to ladder stitch that in, sewing back through the 2 beads, 5 and 6. So we're circling around, still doing kind of that square or that ladder stitch to connect those 2 together. There's multitudes of ways you can do this as well, so keep that in mind. On the first end where you are putting the button, you are going to add 2 of your 11/0 seed beads, your button, and then I did a Chartreuse, an 8/0, and a Chartreuse back through that Cobalt cup button. On this second side here, we're going to get ready and do some adding of a loop. So just like I did on the other side, I'm going to add 2 of my red beads. And then we're going to do our loop that we're going to put on a collection of 30 of our 11/0 seed beads. Prior to that, I'm going to put on 1 of that blue turquoise, and then again 30 of our Chartreuse seed beads. 30 Chartreuse seed beads are now on my thread. I'm going to add 1 more, or I'm sorry, I'm going back through that turquoise bead, sharing it to make a V. And then I'm going to add 2 more of my garnet beads. Sewing back then through those beads there on the end. So we're coming out between 4 and 5. I'm going to sew back in between 6 and 7. Back down through 6 and 5. And creating a nice triangle loop. Again, on the other side, doing the exact same thing. You're going to go back up through all the 11 O's, through the cup button, through all of the seed beads, and reinforce the clasp. If you want to, you can also make a double loop, since it has that 2-loop kind of theme with the strands going through it. You can also do a peyote stitch here, picking up a different color of your Picasso seed beads. When you need to get to the other side, which I've already done here, having put on the cup button first, on the other side when you get to it, after you've gone through and reinforced your thread and needle, you're going to get your thread and needle back down, coming through that last stitch of ladder, and then sew again the whole way back through one of the strands of your seed beads. In the case here of the clasp, I sewed back through the Cobalt. Remember, we sewed down through the Chartreuse to make that nice ending for that clasp. All I have to do now is knot off the thread, bringing it back to that starter bead, and the bracelet will be completed. I wanted to make sure I showed the bracelet on and the fun color mix. I think the colors of this are ideal with that nice braided fashion and having those braided lines. Keep in mind, if you are using a kind of seed bead mix, or you want to use up some seed beads, measure and make sure that those strands all have equal amounts on them. For my smaller wrist here, I ended up using exactly 100 beads per strand, a total of 200 of each color on the strands. I did suggest 120 of each if you do want to make it a little bit bigger. As always, thank you so much for watching, and enjoy making the Montana Sky bracelet. Remember, you can use any type of seed beads, any size, and any style to do this bracelet. If you do need any materials, we are happy to get them to you from us here at PotomacBeads.com, as well as PotomacBeads.eu. We put links of the exact materials listed in the description of the video as well. Remember, you can give a little thumbs up, comment below any changes or any variants or any questions you may have, as well as subscribe to this YouTube channel to get regular updates from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy your Montana Sky bracelet.